Carman and Paul Ahnert.
Hey, welcome to Road Less Traveled, episode 26. And we're here with Bryan Carman and our very special guest, Sean Spicer, multi GMA Award winner, guitarist extraordinaire. And we're really looking forward to getting to know Sean tonight and to get to hear what's going on with him musically and spiritually. So, hey, Bryan.
How's it going tonight, Paul?
It's going good, man. You got some music to share tonight, brother?
Sure. One of my favorite female vocalists, Dawn Michelle from Fireflight. And this is her album called Now. If you haven't heard them, you should check them out. She's got really, really, really strong vocals. An exceptional female vocalist. So that's one. And then, of course, got to go to the throwback band, The Blood Good. Some of the fans didn't like this, but actually, this is my favorite album from them.
It's one of my top favorites of them as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rounded Out of the Rocks is a really good song.
That's my favorite song on there.
Yep. It's so biblical. Then, of course, one of the heavier ones from this band.
Yeah.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Excellent album.
Bob Hartman's one of my favorite guitar players and songwriters.
Yeah, I got to see them play that one live. That was a good show.
So did I. It was an outdoor concert this past summer.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep. That was
so my three, I got Venia, another band that probably nobody else has heard of. These guys are from Finland and female vocalist, just heavy rocker, good old school metal. So if you get a chance to check these guys out, Venia, you won't be disappointed. And so you can make fun of me for being very diverse in my musical taste, but this is something else I've been listening to this week. Rich Mullins. This is the album he made when just before he passed away. It's got the raw recordings. He was in a church recording on a tape recorder, and he was in a vehicle accident and died. And they released the raw recording, and then a bunch of CMA superstars did the album, did the recording. There's two discs,
right?
Two discs, yeah.
Yep.
And then this one, Alice Cooper, Last Temptation. This is such a theologically amazing album, and particularly the song Stolen Prayer. And those who don't know that Alice Cooper is a strong believer. He's got a strong testimony. And the song Stolen Prayer was written by Chris Cornell for Ozzy Osbourne. And Alice Cooper got a hold of it and said, let's rework some of these lyrics. And they recorded it together. And just an amazing song about avoiding Satan's tricks and staying close to God. But just an overall great album. So, Sean, welcome. Glad to have you.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno. This is really cool. Did you have some music you wanted to share with us?
Yes, I did. I didn't have CDs. I have vinyl. So we'll start off. I've been really into this Pink Floyd More.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of a eclectic, interesting album. It doesn't get a lot of recognition. And I've been a Pink Floyd fan for as long as I can remember. But then I picked this one up and started listening to it. And it really just connected with me.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's old Pink Floyd. And here's one you guys would love. These guys are deadly. This is a band called Russian Circles. And it's kind of like metal instrumental.
Oh, nice.
With loops and things. It's really cool. Russian Circles. These guys are just incredible. I discovered this. And lastly, I might get beaten up for this one. Cal Jader. He is a xylophone player because there's a jazz side of me. And yeah, that's not pretty metal or rock, but I don't know. I like listening to different instruments and instrumentation. It really sort of helps me grow and stretch musically because I do love hard rock, but there's a kind of a fusion side to me. There's an ambient side, a lot of different things that I can pull from. So I'm just a music lover at all, but I would say if you had to assess me, I'm probably more from my youth and stuff, more hard rock.
All right. Well, we're excited to have you, and
Thank
we're going
you.
to talk about your exciting career and the things that you've gotten to do and your solo release and things like that. Before we get started, we want to jump to our comment section. And Bryan, you want to read the comments?
Sarah, that we had on last week, she says hello. Good to see you guys. How you doing, Sarah?
Hello, Sarah.
Oh, and Sarah also said love the Batman Cup. And then my girl Leah says ragamuffin.
Yep, that would be the Rich Mullins.
Yep. And she's also said good evening, everybody.
Good
Hey,
evening.
Leah.
And then some woman named Chrissy Ahnert says
Yeah, that
hello.
would be my lovely wife. And welcome. Glad you're on, baby. And Sarah threw out an emoji for us. So, Sean, so I watched some of your music videos and I watched some interviews that you've done, and I've done a little, little background digging on you. And boy, I came away very impressed.
Thank you.
And Sean's a guitarist, but he's not just like a guitarist. He's like a phenomenal guitarist. And so I heard him compared to Phil Kagi, and I would have to agree that I would put him in a
Wow,
category.
thank you. I didn't expect that. That's quite a compliment. I've met him a few times in Nashville.
And
Yeah.
I understand you did something with him at one point.
He was kind of connected to the same crowd that I had the same publicist as him, Lynn McCain, I
Okay.
remember at the time. So he was always a great guy, very down to earth, very sweet.
Okay. Well, tell us about your album.
Well, there's a few things going on. I've had a few solo records, and I'm doing one that's kind of not. It's in the can, but it isn't. It needs to be mixed. It was called Archipedals, and it was just me and a keyboard player got in a room and threw out all these ideas and put loops and things like that. And it's still got to be mixed, and we want to put it out on vinyl. I think I sent there was a couple of YouTube videos. We did Fever Dreams, and I can't remember the other one, but it needs to be mixed. That was a real experimental thing. There's times I go off on these musical tangents in these directions, and like I did in the early 2000s, I went in a very jazz direction, and then I did an album called Olive Tree, and that was connected to an organization called City of Peace in Nashville, and that won, I think, 3 GMAs. It was Album of the Year, but it was very jazzy, and it didn't start out that way. I wanted to make it very kind of Zeppelin-y, Pink Floyd, and then the producer he kind of heard something in it, and he kind of pushed it in more of a jazzy direction, which was fine. So I'm very open to experimenting with music and trying new things, and I always try and reinvent myself every few years, listening to different things, playing with different people, tweaking my gear, you know. Um, I was endorsed with Hughes and Kettner amps for many, many years, and they had a lot of metal players, and now I'm into Fender amps, go figure, and trying different effects, you never stop.
Yeah. So and I understand on the what that was the fig tree,
Oh, the olive tree,
the
yeah.
olive tree. I'm sorry, I listened to it all day today, and
Yeah, they
I
should
should
didn't call it
remember it.
Olive Gardens. People call it that, like the restaurant. It gets mixed up with that. So yeah, I'll take
So
fig tree. Yeah.
the olive tree, the olive tree. You played 11 different guitars on that album.
Yeah, yeah, I did. Well, that's when I was sort of a gear connoisseur, and I had so many guitars, and now I've been reduced to less than half of that. So I experimented. I brought in an SG, I brought in some hollow bodies, a Les Paul Telecaster. I had a double neck at the time, some acoustics, acoustic 12 string. So I was just layering things and doing all sorts of stuff, experimenting. So now I'm a little bit more regimented. I will play, like I just did a gig with a band I'm very proud of, Tom Carlander and Pale Blue Sound. We played 3 nights ago in Bellevue, just outside of Pittsburgh, and I just basically have the same setup for that and pretty much play the same way. But in other applications, I really kind of stretch out and love to experiment. So
Okay,
yeah, I
so
used a lot of guitars for that. Yeah.
yeah, and it sounds great. So I noticed, instrumental yet very spiritually titled songs, and so talk about the spiritual aspect of instrumental music, because obviously there was a spiritual aspect that you were tapping into, that you were influenced by in that.
Yes, I was connected for a while to the Messianic Jewish people. Those are, for those who don't know, those are Jewish people who are believers in Jesus. So they believe in that, Jesus was the Messiah. And I played with a virtuoso violin player, Dan David, and we did a lot of touring. We were on TV shows, and I connected with a wonderful family down in Nashville, and they had an idea for a concept album. And I had these music, and I presented it to them, and they liked it. And we put together an album, and basically that's a concept record, all of three, about the struggles of Israel. So the struggles of the Jewish people. That's why you see titles like Sephardim and Diaspora. So it's almost taken from like the Book of Exodus. So I just wrote the music, and the executive and the producer, Jochen Marcelino, he thought up the titles and brought the whole thing to life and brought the concept together. So it did have a very spiritual thing to it. And there were many people that had a hand in it, the musicians and stuff. So yeah.
So that's pretty awesome.
Hey, my girlfriend Leah that commented earlier, she's a Messianic Jew.
Yeah, they're wonderful people, and they've done wonderful things. I really enjoyed being a part of what they do, and I would go to MJA many times. I haven't gone in a while, but yes. So I've done that was one of the things that I did, and I've been all over the map. But before, I was connected to a lot of Christians in the Latino, and I recorded a worship album in Costa Rica, sorry, with Johnny Juarez, and I've done a lot of session work. So I've been around. So I've just kind of, like passed the baton or something like that. Musical chairs, that sort of thing. So if someone
Yeah.
ever wanted me and they could use me, and I was like, sure, I'm open to that.
That's the way we have to be in service to our Savior.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, I would love to do something heavier at some point, and just waiting for that opportunity to come. If someone ever said, want to do something heavier and drop D tune, I'd love to do that and play in, some drop D tune. I was a huge fan of Thousand Foot Crutch,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
love their music, and I always wanted to be. I knew Trevor. He was in some of the circles that I was. So I that was something I've always wanted to do, but you got to take the opportunities as they come.
He has a great voice, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Trevor,
he does. Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
Yeah.
And they're from Canada also, aren't they?
yeah. They are, but some of them relocated to like Nashville, to Franklin.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
You want to read those?
Yeah. So Terry Lynn Kelly is on with Chaz Bond, one of our former guests. Hey guys, great to have you here.
wonderful
And
people.
yes.
Chaz
And
Chaz Bond sang one of our songs on our second album.
Yeah, he's got a killer voice.
Oh
he
yeah.
does incredible, and a great range, because I mean what he did for War was completely different than what he does with Biogenesis.
Yep.
But it was all still great stuff. So John Paredes, I hope I'm saying it properly. A
John
couple of
Paredes.
Sean fans watching over here. So is that somebody you know, Sean?
Yes, he's one of my bandmates in
Oh,
Pale Blue Sound. So we just played together a few nights ago, and he's a dear friend and musical inspiration. He plays bass really well, and piano excellent. And he's like me; he's into a lot of genres of music and things. So it's really a great thing to play alongside him.
excellent.
Cool. Welcome.
And
Thanks for watching.
yeah, thanks for being with us. He shared a couple of links that will be available for whoever wants to do after, when the show's up. I'm sure it's links to your guys' music. Paula Salmons from Bristol, Tennessee. That's my daughter. Hey, Paula.
Hello.
And John responded to us with a hi. So great having everybody on tonight. So let's talk about your spiritual journey a little bit. And like you said, you did some stuff in Costa Rica, and then with the Latin church, and then you you kind of went into the Messianic Jewish community. So where did you start with Christ?
As a teenager, when I entered high school, I was very confused and lost and trying to find my way. And I started going to church. And at that time, kids were getting into a lot of trouble back then, drugs and things like that. And I really didn't know where I fit in. So I started going to church, and I got saved and accepted Jesus, and have been on this journey ever since. There's been some great highs and some incredible lows, but um, that's just the way it is. That's
Yep.
that's the journey.
Yeah. So that was our show was that last week, our show?
I don't remember.
It was staying, going through the difficult times.
Oh,
And
yeah,
staying
yep,
close
yep.
to Christ. Yeah. Because,
Sarah's watching and she goes, duh.
yeah. So, we go through everybody thinks, oh, come to Jesus, everything will be great. No, it's not that way. We're going to go through the same trials and tribulations everybody else goes through in life. And the difference is we get to go through it with God.
Exactly.
And that's the different thing. So how did you get involved with the Latin Christian community?
Well, when I was living in Toronto, it would have been around 2004 or 5. I get in these creative spurts where a lot of music comes to me at once. And sometimes I'm just dry. I don't have anything for a long, long time. But I had a bunch of music, and I put an ad out in a paper or a musical thing. And I got this response from a guy named Johnny Juarez, who is a great worship leader. He's had a music school down in Nashville. He's a great guy. And we put this record together. He said, okay, you'll write 5 songs, I'll write 5. And we put it together. It got a lot of radio play in Canada at some of their stations. And we recorded some of the bed tracks in Toronto. And then we flew down to Costa Rica. And we, added more stuff to it and then mixed it and put it out. I think that's out there on Spotify or YouTube, but that's a long time ago. That's probably 2006, maybe 7. Yeah.
Okay.
And we did all the Latino churches, and it was wonderful because these people, the Latin musicians, they totally play by feel and passion. So if you were to say a minor 7 flat 5 chord, they wouldn't know, but they just play it so well. And I would say that was a very huge growing experience for me because I had to just sort of adapt to what they do, and they're very passionate and sincere. So we did a lot of festivals and churches, and then after we did the record, after a few years, he kind of parted ways. He moved to the U.S. and I followed a few years later. But that was a wonderful experience.
That's excellent. Bryan, I know you're probably chomping at the bit to talk about guitars, being a fellow guitar player.
What is your favorite guitar that you have?
Oh, that's an easy one. I have an Gibson ES 135, and it's kind of like, it's a jazz guitar, but it isn't. It can do a plethora of things. You could play blues on it or jazz or rock, and it's just got a good feel. If I was only allowed to have one guitar, that would be it. But
so far, this is the one that I like, and we used it on our last album, and it really sounds good. This is it's a Eddie Van Halen 5150 series.
Oh, excellent. Peavy.
Is that? No, it's a Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Let me get over here. See?
Oh, I never even. That's amazing. I've never heard of that. Eddie Van Halen model. I thought, he had a 5150. I think he did it through Peavy, and he did Amsterdam. He's done a lot of stuff, but that looks very cool.
Yeah, it sounds pretty sweet. And the other one I have is a Jackson guitar. I think it's called a Jackson Dinky, and then my acoustic is Ibanez.
All good choices.
Thank
All
you.
good choices. What about amps? What would you have for amps?
Amps, I have my Marshall half stack.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, probably with Celestions in it.
I don't even,
Probably with Celestion speakers.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I got it for $250 at like a pawn shop or a music shop.
Those are the best. Yeah, those are the best.
It says MG series 100 HDFX. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
So
what about effects would you use? Would you use pedals, or do you have?
I have a Boss NE80.
NE80. Oh, that's cool.
Okay. What do you use?
I've got a rack. with stuff in it. An old ART, which has got sounds. It sounds like the '80s, and I got a
Oh,
little
that's
power
good.
amp. And then I have just a lot of pedals that I've collected over the years. For amps, I would have a couple Hughes and Kettner. I got a Hughes and Kettner combo, and then a head, and a couple Fenders, a Fender Blues Junior, and then I've got a new Fender, a Hot Rod DeVille. And these things do different things. When I did theater work, I used the Blues DeVille because it was only 15 watts, and you got to be quieter. And that's the thing today's. You go on these stages. Everyone's complaining about volume, so amps are getting smaller. I remember the good old days. You see people with stacks and stuff, and um, effects when I use live is a Digitech RP1. I've got
Okay.
two of them, and I've used that. That's a multi-effects thing. I've used that for probably the late '90s. I used it in churches. Used it for recording. In fact, the recording session I have on Saturday, I'm using it, and a few side pedals, a Crybaby, a tuner, a
I've heard of
boost
that.
pedal, and then some kind of weird chorus modulation that I had a guy built for me in Columbus called Thimble Wasp pedals. They're really cool, and he's just like an engineer, mad scientist who just it's a small pedal company, but if you want something made, he'll do it for you. So he's really
Really?
cool. Yeah.
I used to have a Digitech. That was a while ago.
Yeah,
But
they've always had good products. Yeah, always very,
well,
very
this
good.
Boss pedal actually gave us a good sound that we found, so we took a picture of it. So in case we bump the knobs or something.
Well, yeah, sometimes the tape or using the old marker on that, marking
Yep.
it off and things. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Boss.
No.
Yeah, my first pedals were Boss. I remember as a kid washing dishes and going down to the music store and looking in the glass counter, and then every
Yep.
paycheck I'd buy a pedal and another one and another one. So I
I don't
had
know how I don't know how guitarists do it live. They have this gigantic board full of individual pedals, and they know exactly which one to hit when they do it. And I'm like, that would take a lot of
Yeah,
time.
that's that can be complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be complicated. I've been kind of getting rid of some of my pedals, just sort of downsizing and becoming more of a minimalist, just keeping what I know. But yeah, it just depends on what you feel. If you're doing metal, you get the Marshall out, or um, if you're doing other stuff, the Fenders work really well. So it just depends on the music and the vibe you're into.
I've never actually turned this Marshall up all the way. I think we've had it to like 4, and it is blasting. Because we
Yeah,
might we mic it for the recording.
there's a cool company I may get into. A friend of mine, Cassandra Sotos, we did some work together. She's a great violinist player. And they have this company called Brown Box, right? And that's that concept that Eddie Van Halen had where you can adjust the voltage on your amp and that will sort of fluctuate the tone. And
Okay.
I'm probably going to experiment with that. And if you drop it a couple volts, that can completely change the sound. And yeah, that's how Eddie Van Halen got that sound he had, was messing with the voltage. And they sell the Brown Box down in
Okay.
Nashville.
I think I've heard of that. You know who would have a great conversation with you is my drummer, because he did
Really?
sound at church and he knows all about this amp stuff. Because I'm learning from him.
Really? Drum?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, John's a really cool guy. I think you guys would have some good conversations.
Excellent. Yeah.
Paul, you want to hit the comments real quick?
Yeah. So Leah, Sean, you don't happen to have a guitar like right next to you? You can grab and play a little something for us.
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay. We had a special request. So
Yep.
anyway, to all this technical talk, I understand you went to a Steve Vai clinic.
Yeah, yes, I
point.
did. He was so cool. That was 2009. I got to think back, and he did this weird tour called the Alien Guitar Secrets. And I was in a transition where, I was going to pursue music a little bit more seriously, and he put on this clinic, and he just sat there and let us just ask him any question.
Oh, that must have been cool.
And yeah, he did jam with people, but he only went to a certain amount of cities and things like that, and we could just pick his brain about anything,
Huh.
So that's really cool.
So
Yeah,
who is your favorite guitar player of all?
that's hard to say. Growing up in Toronto, I was heavily influenced by Rush. I mean, whenever we went over to kids' basements, that's all we played. But I think if you were to put my style on trial, I'm more like Andy Summers from the Police, because he was into punk, he was into new wave, he was into jazz, rock. So he did a plethora. So he was a very eclectic player. I've always considered myself like that, or like Steve Hackett from Genesis, something like that. I never got overly technical, even though I do love that. I mean, I had all the shrapnel records of Richie Cawson and Greg Howe, and I love those shred players, but I never gravitated in my playing style too much toward that. So it was more um, like a Steve Hackett, like sort of serve the song. And there's a certain technical thing about my playing, but I never was really overly technical, to be honest.
I was
But Andy
influenced a
Summers might
lot
be
by.
my number one.
Have you heard of the band Bloodgood?
No, I haven't.
Really? Paul Jackson, the guitar player from there, I picked up a few things from him, and we interviewed him not too long ago. You should check out Bloodgood. They
Okay, yeah,
disbanded
I will
because
definitely do that. Yeah.
Michael Bloodgood, the bassist, died last year.
About 3 years ago.
That
2 or
long
3 years
ago
ago.
already?
Yeah, because that was before Immortal Fest.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it was about 3 years ago that Michael
Three.
Bloodgood died.
Wow. Yeah, there was a band I liked that had a great guitar player. I can't remember the name. They're a band called Skillet.
Oh yeah, they're still out there.
Yep.
Yeah, they're
They
still
have a
out there
different
making
guitar
music.
player now.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
They had a different drummer.
there were a few others in Nashville. There were a guy, I can't remember the name of him. Was it Lincoln Brewster or something?
Oh
He
yeah,
was
I remember him.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember him from back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, maybe.
Yeah, he was really good. And Stu G was
Yeah.
another one if you look at that genre of music. But spending time in Nashville was very interesting because everyone labels it as country, but no, there's a huge country element, but there's all kinds of music that comes out of there.
Right.
There's a huge blues thing there, and you can't help but being in Nashville and just get better in any way. If you're a songwriter, you're going to get better. If you're a player, you're going to get better because everybody's a virtuoso there. You know, the cop that wrote you a ticket is better than you. I'm not kidding you.
Nowadays, they're like little kids, or you see the videos on YouTube and they're going flying out. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I teach at a music school and I see that. I teach at the School of Rock here in Pittsburgh. And it's amazing to see some of these kids, like they're so into music and they're just concentrating on that and they're not out getting into trouble. And
Yep.
it's a really good program. And then they get up and they play on stages and in venues and around town, and it's really, really good for them. So I've been at the School of Rock in Pittsburgh since I've been here, and then I was in it for a few years in Cleveland. So I do like teaching. I love that too.
That's cool.
Yeah, my son, my middle son, is a drummer, and he went to School of Rock for a little while. And my buddy Victor Griffin, who him and I started Metal Mission in Knoxville together, we went out to the club Open Chord out here in Knoxville where we used to do our outreaches, and we got to go see a School of Rock show. And it was impressive for these kids to get up there and do what they were doing. And School of Rock is a great program. So yeah,
I highly recommend it. Well, any music school is good. That's going to, but this one is particularly geared toward getting kids on performance, getting them to learn songs and get on stage. So you can go to some music schools that are just going to teach them the fundamentals, but this really gets kid up on stage, and it's a great thing. It's a great thing when you see a kid and he's got no confidence, and all of a sudden you see him just ripping it out, on stage. It's just, yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Music is really good.
Yes.
That really is. So, going back to the spiritual aspect of your musical journey. So you did the Latin churches, and then you moved on to the Messianic community. So how did that transition take place, and what was going on there?
Well, it kind of just ran its course, and the fellow I was with, I was in Canada, he moved to the States, and then in a session I crossed a Messianic Jewish violin player, and he was incredible. So we did churches together, and we did all sorts of stuff. We were on a messianic Jewish TV show called House of David, and that was really interesting because they were doing that sort of music that I can't describe it, but there I was ripping blues licks on an SG. So I only lasted 2 shows. So yeah, it was. Uh, yeah, that was a good part. I think maybe 6 or 7 years I was into that, and then I just sort of did. I took a break and I just played in my church, But before that, before I did the Costa Rica thing, I mean, many years I was in secular clubs and in tribute bands and cover bands and things, and I did theater work. But then I stopped that, and I just enjoyed playing on the weekend in my church. When I was in Cleveland, I played 7 months in my church, played bass because nobody played bass. Like the worship leader played guitar, and that's fine. So I played bass and I loved it. So there was times I just would just, be low key, and I would just play on Sundays in churches. So I'm happy with either, if I get on a stage or do a session, but if I just do that, that's fine. I'm kind of just open to anything, pretty just laid back right now.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the spiritual aspect, the spiritual side of what we do as content creators, and being available.
Yep.
And being okay with the downtime, being okay with those quiet periods, but being available and being willing and flexible to follow the lead of the Lord. So that's, kudos for that. That's
and we talk about the spiritual journey. For me, it definitely is mountains and valleys. I can remember being, where things were just going perfectly or just amazing, and all of a sudden it's just like you fall off a cliff. I've been there. I mean, remember 10 years ago when I was in Nashville touring a movie. I had endorsements. I was winning awards, and then it all just kind of dried up all of a sudden, And then I found myself living in Niagara Falls, New York, and I thought, well, what just happened? Those are things, and I've experienced that the last year and 9 months, where I had some very personal tragedies and some very deep heartache and difficult times. But my faith has really sustained me through it. Definitely, it really helps also to have good people, good friends, and I got some good, strong mentors around me. The Reverend Don Jeffries have been a very, very strong influence on me, and that's. But yeah, we'll notice that we're at the top of the mountain. All of a sudden, it's just like boom, like a roller coaster.
Yep.
I've experienced that so many times.
Mentorship is really important.
Yes, absolutely.
I need people to keep me in line.
Yep. Exactly, we all do.
Sure. So, without going in any details or getting into anything personal that you're uncomfortable sharing, thinking about those times where you went from the top to the bottom and now you've come through it and you look back, what kind of lessons did you learn? And I'm not asking for any personal details, just like generically, spiritual lessons that you learned, or be as personal as you want to, but I'm not trying to pry into anything.
I think, well, one thing is to sort of really take time when you make decisions. You got to remember, when you make decisions, that there's always a good consequence and a bad consequence. And a lot of times in my decision making, I've been maybe a little bit too impulsive. And if I would have just, I have a few do-overs that I would love to do in my life, where I could just go back and think, man, if I just would have went this way instead of that way, things would have turned out very, very differently. But yes, I've learned to sort of really rely on mentorship and praying whenever you make a decision or any type of big decision, because you think, well, how is this going to turn out? And a lot of times when I was younger, I really didn't think about that. If it looked good, hey, I would, I would do that. I would get into this or get into that. And sometimes things worked out and sometimes they didn't. And sometimes they would be very painful lessons,
Yeah, but the key word is, you said they're lessons. And that's what we preach that on our show. Because the hard times when we really learn the best ones. Because we seem to have like pride when things are going good. It's easy to fall into that. So got to keep ourselves in check with mentors, church, Bible reading, and prayer. So that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I would have to say, to be honest, the last year and 8 months or whatever was a very, very dark time. I will share it. I got divorced a year ago. I didn't see that coming. I was in love, and my wife had a severe mental breakdown, and I didn't see that coming. And before that, I was at a point in my life where everything was good. I had money in the bank, and we were traveling, and I just thought, I remember saying, "Thank you, God. Life is good." And all of a sudden, just boom,
Wow.
I got blindsided, and it's a terrible thing. And if I didn't have some of the friendships and people around me, and the mentorships, I'm not really convinced that I could even be here. It was very painful. So it's very important that sometimes we lean on other people, and then when we see other people who are hurting or in duress, that we offer our support.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something we talk about a lot in our show is staying connected to the body, staying connected in fellowship
Yep.
with a good support group of believers, because, any given moment, life can take a dip or a bad turn with no fault of your own. Just
Yes, exactly.
you
Sometimes
don't
you
know
see
what's
it
around the
coming, and
corner.
sometimes you don't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're separating yourself because everything's going great, and I have that tendency to separate. Um, it's you're not you're setting yourself up for failure at a more difficult time, because these times do come. We're all going to experience difficulty and
Yep.
hardships.
Yeah. Well, that definitely is true.
All right. So something very intriguing to me. It was something I talked a lot about when I first saw it. Um, you're a Kentucky Colonel.
Yeah.
So that is something really cool. Tell us about what it means to be a Kentucky Colonel, how you get to be a Kentucky Colonel, and inspire somebody to do something great.
Yeah, they're really about philanthropy and helping people. And that's one thing in my life I've always tried to do. I volunteered. I've raised money for good causes. I've done 3 missions trips. And you can only become one when you're recommended from another colonel. And then it goes to the governor, and they fill out all these forms and ask what you've done, and they do background checks on you, and then the governor will give you um will sort of, like, I guess, knight you. You're gonna eat fried chicken the rest of your life or something. Tell you a story. I went in KFC and I showed my card, and they wanted a picture with me, and I think they gave me, free piece of chicken or something.
That's pretty cool.
So, but yes, it's kind of a Kentucky thing, but you have to be nominated by someone else, and they're heavily on philanthropy and helping things and raising money. And I have been like that in my life. I've always tried to be empathetic and sympathetic to other people, and I think that's a good thing when you see that. Sometimes when you're helping someone else, you're going to forget about your woes or your troubles, because there's always somebody worse off.
Yep.
Always.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, and that was interesting. That was bestowed on me the same time I got divorced. So that was just a very dark time, and then that came up. So I was like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, um, so was there a specific thing you did, or was it just a compilation of
It
your
was a
life in general?
compilation. They also put in like some of my music stuff, but they had mentioned I've raised money for certain organizations. There was many years ago I raised money for the leprosy mission, and I remember seeing this TV show one day, and it was these kids, and they were literally rotting, like body parts falling off.
Wow.
And we don't have that here in the Western civilization, but in countries like Malaysia and some of these poor countries, yeah. And that can be cured with like $11 a day. So I
Mm.
saw it one day, and I raised a bunch of money and sent it over. And I think I got 3 kids treated for it. That was
Wow.
many years ago. I think about 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. So I've always done stuff like that. I've done missions trips and built a church in the Philippines, and I went to Northern Ireland, Alaska. So there's been a lot of things that I've done. I haven't done anything like that, like a missions trip, and I would like to do one. I don't know where. I love to travel, so that kind of fits in with that. So yeah.
That's really awesome. You mentioned Philippines. I'm going to go back a little bit to our comments.
Yeah, I was going to ask
And
you to do that.
yeah, and so we were talking about Skillet, and my daughter reminded me that we had seen Skillet together live, and that was a great time. And you mentioned Philippines, and we have Liza on from the Philippines watching us tonight. So
That's amazing.
that's exciting. Hi, Liza.
Thanks for
And
watching.
then, yeah, and then Sarah. Well, we were talking about difficult times. She said, but without wrong turns, we don't appreciate the good turns as well. The bad decisions God uses to help us trust him and grow in wisdom. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. And Daniel's on. Hey, buddy. I was telling you about my son that's a drummer. That's Daniel. So the School of Rock alumnus. And Ray Para of Sacred Warrior. He's on with us.
Hey, Ray.
What's up, Ray?
We're going to have him pretty soon.
Yeah, he'll be on the show next week.
Yeah, that's next week already.
Yeah.
Woo.
And
Look
Chrissy
forward to
said
that.
that the stuff that you were sharing there about what it took to become a Kentucky Colonel, she said that's wonderful stuff. So you're inspiring people even through our show, even now. Ray sends you a hug. It says that's awesome. And
I think he goofed up because look at the next one. He says, I mean, Sean.
yeah. And Daniel mentioned Traveling Man. I guess that's a nice blues reference there. And Sarah said, may God continue to bless you for the work that you've done for him. And, that's the thing, you're doing these things and I'm sure when you saw these children that were rotten and sick, you didn't think, oh, I'm going to make a name for myself by helping these kids out.
Right.
Oh, it was all underground. I put this really CD called out. It's not even out there. It was called Textures. And then I was doing shows at churches with someone. It was before the Latino guy, and I talked to the leprosy mission, and I said, "Well, any sale from this CD, I will just donate to you guys."
Awesome.
So when I went to churches, I just gave all the money to it. So I had a bunch of these CDs printed out, and it was weird, wacky instrumental stuff. I mean, it was, you'd probably hear it in the elevator or at Rite Aid or something like that. But yeah, I just had an idea, and I thought, wow, maybe I could do something. I was always influenced by that story that, people think that we're just overwhelmed with adversity and problems in our world. And it was like that story of the kid or the man walking on the beach, and there's all these starfish that were going to die that were on the beach. And the kid was saying he was throwing one at a time, and someone said, well, why are you wasting your time? They're going to die. And he picked up and threw one in the sea and said, well, it made a difference to that one. Picked up another and said, made a difference to that one. So I think if people really everybody just did something, something, just a difference that we could make. Just do something. That's all. Just do something.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the theme of our show tonight. You want to change people's lives, do something.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be something big or elaborate. You're going to go do some mission trip or, in some safari. It can be just, I heard a story about someone going to commit suicide, and all it took was someone phoning up saying, hey, I'm here for you. And someone told me that, just sometimes reaching out to someone, or just do something. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be something big. It can just be something small. But those small things really sometimes they add up.
Exactly.
And I know that's been that way for me, where people have reached out or they've been there, or they've done, little things. And I think about through my dark time where, a dear friend of mine, let me stay at his place, and I slept in his basement. I didn't want to be home when I was going through a separation and a divorce, and the people that were there, I think, man, they made all the difference in the world. I may not even be here because of them. It was just that's what I've learned. Just do something. Just do something.
Excellent. Chrissy asked, no, there it is. I guess going back to the Kentucky Colonel, did they approach you or you approached them? So you said it was another colonel.
Yeah. Yeah, it was another colonel who phoned me and said, I would like to nominate you. And he asked me a bunch of questions, and what have you done? I just feel I'd like to do this. And this man was an extraordinary man. He was a retired police officer. He was a chaplain. He was a veteran. He did a lot of amazing stuff. I think he even guarded one of our presidents. And
Wow.
he said, I'd like to nominate you for this. And can you tell me more about your background? So I did. And then he put it together in this form that they sent out, and they sent it to the governor of Kentucky, and then they nominate on it. And then I was selected.
That's
So
so
it also
cool.
kind of has a thing for it. You sort of have to carry on the tradition of being a philanthropist, and then I get notices and things of things that those guys do,
Hmm.
where they're raising money for the hurricane victims in North Carolina, things like that.
Very cool. Paula wants to know about information about the leprosy organization. Do you still have any connection to that or any contact
It's
information for
been
them?
years. I think it's just if you just Google the leprosy mission.
Leprosy mission. Okay.
Yeah. I remember at the time they used to have these ads, these commercials that would run, and you'd see children. I mean, they got all their fingers missing, and they were saying for a certain amount a day that we can cure. It only takes $200 to cure one child, and it's very painful. So when you see kids suffering, I mean, that hits home. So I thought, okay, I got to do something. So, I did. I took a chance.
Oh, that's really cool. Chrissy says that's beautiful, and she agrees. The small things are definitely big things, bigger than people think. And to us, it's a small gesture, but like you said, to that person that's getting ready to jump off a bridge, hey, don't do that. Oh, somebody
Yeah.
cares about me. It's huge.
Yep.
Well, there's a scripture in the Bible that always resonated with me when where people were giving into the donation box. And
Mm,
then the widow who gave 2 mites. And then
right.
Jesus said, well, she gave more than all the rest of you. You guys had all this money and you gave only a portion when you had. She gave just a couple pennies.
Yep.
Right.
So I always thought, wow, it's not the amount, it's just, the intention or the effort behind it.
Yeah. And, when you think about when we stand before Christ with our works, we're not going to be judged on what we did as much as why we did what we did, the
Yep.
motive behind it. And so, were we doing it for the pat in the back and the accolade? It's going to burn up. Doing it because you really love the Lord and you want to represent him, that's going to be treasures in heaven.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I've always seen it. I've never wanted to be a person who was stagnant in my faith. I always wanted to be kind of productive in something, and doing something. And I haven't done much lately, but I would like to do some kind of trip somewhere. If I went to Haiti or something, I missed that. I haven't done one in a while, but
I
We
want to
go
hear
through
well done. I want to hear well done, good and faithful servant.
Yes, that's the goal. I've went through stages where I've been very busy serving and doing things and out there. And then there was a very quiet lull where, I'm preaching every other week at a local church, and that was pretty much it. And then God opened the door for us to be able to do this. And so there's those periods of time where we just, and I call those the Mount Sinai moments where God's prepping you for the next thing.
Yep.
And so whatever the quiet time is you're learning, you're growing, you're being poured into so that you're ready for the next thing that God has for you, the next journey. So,
yeah, that's true. That is true. When I was, I never expected to live in some of the places I did, like Niagara Falls, New York. And when I came to the United States, I thought, okay, I'm in Nashville. That's it. Then I ended up in Niagara Falls, New York. I was in Cleveland, and now I'm in Pittsburgh. Very grateful to be here. For those people out there that are Steelers fans, or
Go Buccaneers.
so you're from Detroit. I thought you'd be a Lions fan.
Oh no, I'm on the west side, and I grew up down in Florida. So I've been to like 70 Buccaneer games. I've been a Buccaneer fan since 1976, and I got that too.
Oh wow, yeah.
so Daniel wants to know, how did you know the gentleman that nominated you for a colonel?
I crossed paths with him through ministry, and we became friends. And he got nominated because of his a lot of the things he did. He was a police officer, a veteran, and he was a chaplain, and he had a ministry. Yeah, I met him through people, and he became a friend. So
Awesome. And Paula, in response to, talk about the quiet stuff, she said, sounds like you've been very productive in lots of things, and even in the midst of your own trials and suffering. And that's such an inspiration to me and to Bryan, and I'm sure, and to our listeners and viewers, that, you went through this stuff, horrible thing, a divorce, unexpected divorce like that. And you didn't go through it by yourself. You went through it with the Lord, and you went through it with others that cared about you, that represented God to you.
Yep.
And I think that's such an inspiration for so many of us, that, to not only trust God during that time, but to be that person for somebody else during their time.
yeah, that is so true.
So, you also mentioned you got a new project in the works right now.
Yeah, well, there's actually three. But Tom Kurlander and Pale Blue Sound, we've been working on a record for a while. I think we're 4 or 5 songs into it. We plan on finishing it. He's a very strong songwriter, and we perform as often as we can in the Pittsburgh area. I have the Archipedals, which was a very ambient instrumental thing, me and a keyboard player. Very, very different. So that needs to be mixed and mastered, and then it's going to be on vinyl. And then this Saturday, I'm heading to Toronto to record on a Rush tribute project for Neil Peart, who died, the drummer. So that's I've been told that's a big deal, because the producer Terry Brown's going to be involved, so that they've selected certain musicians to do certain Rush songs and put it on this record, and it's being sent over to England or somewhere to be mixed and mastered. So I have to go in to do this one Rush song on Saturday.
Can you say what song it is or not?
Yeah, it wasn't one I wanted, but it was called What You're Doing from the first album. It's very Led Zeppelin-y.
Okay.
Yeah, from the first Rush album. I would have preferred a lot of other songs like Tom Sawyer or Limelight,
Yep.
Spirit of the Radio. There's many, many others, but yeah, they picked me for that one, so it's okay, sure, why not?
You'll take it.
And do you know anybody else that's playing on that, or is that secret information?
No, I don't. There's some interesting people they haven't told me. I know one guy who's a bass player. He's an excellent bass player, Mike Dale. He's great. So he's on it. So I don't even know who the drummer or the singer is. So it's just that song, and then they've picked different musicians for different songs, and it's like a tribute record to Neil Peart. And then they're planning on having that out where they're having some not a benefit show, but a tribute show to him at some point. Yeah, as you know, he died 5 years ago.
Was it that long already?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
January of 2020.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember getting the news, and it was just, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I remember.
in Toronto, Russia's like the Beatles were to like England to, Russia's like that. They have that kind of influence, in the Toronto area. So
Yeah. So, coming from Toronto to the States, what's the dynamic like? Is it church wise, culture wise? Is it a tough transition?
it is and it isn't. I mean, the States is obviously much more bigger and there's more opportunities. It was a transition for me in stages, because first I had a work permit, and then I got a visa, and then I became a citizen. So there's a lot of similarities. I mean, people think it's very different. You go to Canada, yes, there's McDonald's, there's Walmart, there's Burger King. I can go on and on and on.
Mhm.
But there's some differences, there's warmer weather in a lot of places here, and like I've said other times, the cost of living is much easier here. So there's many benefits to coming to the U.S. I love it. So yeah, it wasn't a difficult transition to me, even though I've lived in 5 states now since I've been
Wow.
here. Let me think now. Was it 12 years? Technically, about 12 years. Yeah.
Okay.
And we got to be careful about those Canadians jumping over the border, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. regardless of what the governments are doing, we love our Canadian brothers and sisters.
I have relatives in Ontario.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. I grew up in the Toronto area, and Toronto, since I grew up as a kid, it's expanded about 2 or 3 times. It's bigger than Chicago. It's got 6 million people.
Have you been to Ontario?
Yeah, I was born there.
Ah, I have
Yeah.
my grandma's side. I'm a little French Canadian, eh?
Oh yeah, that's like Quebec.
Yeah. So, churches there. I mean, we hear stuff, not necessarily true or not, but is there restrictions on what churches can preach in Canada right now, as far as like hate speech and things like that?
Um, Somewhat. I mean, when I look at that sort of thing, I think I really noticed it during COVID. I
Okay.
mean, they had curfews. You couldn't go out after 10 at night. And where we had kind of restrictions here, I was living in New York, and that was a pretty restrictive state. But there, it was like, uh, I can't even describe it. Like, yeah, I mean, you had health officials harassing you, and they had vaccine passports that you couldn't go into a restaurant unless you had the vaccine
Mm.
passport, and it was people losing their jobs, and so yeah, there's some restrictions. They don't have as much, I would say, as much freedom as we do. They don't.
Okay. Well, one thing I can say for sure, um, everyone I've ever met from Canada has been like super nice, super friendly, um, just great people. So, that's one thing I can say. I've never met somebody that from Canada I didn't like or didn't get along with.
So, Sean, what sports do you like, and what are your favorite teams?
Well, that's what. Let me think. Basketball, I would say I love the Cavaliers. They're really good because I lived in Cleveland for a bit. They're good. Baseball, I lean toward. Um, I um like the Yankees. They've always been like amazing.
Mhm.
Um, Yankees, but I liked I like the Cleveland Indians. They were a good team. You know, football. I lived in the Buffalo area, so I do like the Bills. I love the Bills. I used to go to Bills games. I'm not a Browns fan, and I
Okay.
and I do love the Steelers. Sometimes I find it's not so much teams as I like players. I did at one time really like Tom Brady. You
Mm.
know, and
Yeah.
I was trying to say even to Cleveland, they should have got him. He still had some life left into him. Um, Trying to think what other teams do I like?
What about NHL?
Hockey's a
Yep.
weird one. Yeah, I would have
Okay.
to say, well, I'm in Pittsburgh, so I love this city, and I've had a deep, deep love and relationship with the city. So I like the Penguins. I love Sidney Crosby. When I lived in Buffalo, I used to go to Buffalo games all the time, Sabres games.
I go Red Wings.
Yeah, Red Wings were historic. They had Gordie Howe and some Steve Yzerman and those great
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
And
the
yeah.
Russian Five.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, the story was when I was leaving Cleveland, I came very close to going to Detroit. And
Really?
yes, I was leaning heavily toward here because I have a lot of friends and I love the city, but it was very difficult to find a house here.
Huh.
And the last house I saw, I managed to get because they kept falling through. And this was the last house I put an offer in, they took it, or else I was on my way to Detroit. It was, so it was meant to be. And I'm very, very happy here. This is Pittsburgh is a great city. It's got a great atmosphere and great creativity, great restaurants. It's a great vibe. Have you guys ever been to Pittsburgh or?
I've been to
No,
Philadelphia, but not Pittsburgh.
I think I went through it.
Yeah, it's it's just a really neat city. I've had a relationship for about 15 years, and I've been meaning to come here, and my biggest mistake is I didn't come here earlier. So I was always, when I left Nashville, I was going to come here. I didn't, and I ended up in New York for a long time, and then I went to was left New York after COVID. I ended up, was going to try and come here, but finally I said enough is enough. So yeah,
Hey, I want to be silly for a second. I know that you're from Canada, so I want you
yeah.
to say the word about.
About, did I
Yep,
say it okay?
about.
About,
I was starting to pay attention to your enunciation, and I can hear the Canadian in it.
Well, I heard it
still
right
have
up, right
that.
off the
I thought I
bat.
shipped that years ago. I thought I
Yeah.
shipped that years ago.
No, I heard a little inflection right when we first started,
Yep.
and I was like, cool.
We're not mocking it. I just think it's cool.
No, I've been trying to get rid of it, and it's like, man,
Trying to get rid of it. That's hilarious.
yeah, I've been trying to, like, sometimes it just comes out. I don't get it, but yeah, I thought living in the States for all these years, I would just cut it loose. But yeah, I get all these questions. Are you Canadian? I go, yes, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
every once in a while, someone will do that to me too. They'll say, "Are you Canadian?" I'm like, "No." But
I think that's something that's hard to shake because I left New Jersey when I was like 9 years old, moved to Florida, and as far as I knew, I didn't have any accent at all. And then I come to Tennessee, and people are like, "You weren't always from Florida, were you?" And I'm like,
that's funny.
Yeah.
So, I guess we don't even realize it sometimes that there's certain words that we still inflect from.
Yeah, I always tell
early
people
on.
a joke that, I ended up in the States is they swapped me out for Michael Moore. So, yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our hour.
That went
This
fast.
went really quick. You've been a fantastic guest.
Thank you.
Loved having you on. If I
Love
want to
being
buy
here.
some of your music, where do I get it?
You could go on to like YouTube, and just put my name, Sean Spicer, and put Olive Tree or put Arc of Petals, ARC, like of, and petals is PETALS, petals. And then I would recommend the band I've played with for 13 years, Tom Kurlander and Pale Blue Sound. So if you go into Spotify or any of those streaming networks, YouTube, there's a lot of our live stuff we've done. So it's kind of a hybrid of Tom Petty meets Bruce Springsteen meets Lou Reed, kind of classic rock. So he's a great songwriter, and we got a great band. We have John Paredes and David Harris and Justin and Steve Irwin. So it's a great band. So if you're ever in the Pittsburgh area, please come out and see us. But yeah, Tom, those would be the ones I would say just sort of Google and search, And if
Okay.
you put my name up, other stuff will come. There's session work I did in Holland and stuff like that. Or Johnny Juarez is another one. If you put Johnny Juarez, Here I Go. That was the record we did in Costa Rica 19 years ago.
Okay,
So there's a lot of stuff out there. There's stuff
So we
I
can
even
listen.
forgot about.
But if I wanted to buy something, are you still stuff for sale that you get royalties off of, or is it kind of
Yeah,
like
if you went to I think the website City of Peace, that was the record label I was on. They had distribution through Integrity, so they still sell my album through that, even though that came out in 2011.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So, like I always say, if you want to hear good music, you got to support the good music. So buy, and make sure you get, check them out. John shared a lot of links in the comment section from YouTube. So if you're watching and you want to get a good sample, click on those links and then go buy something. Anything you want to say in closing tonight? Anything you want to leave us, impart to us?
No, I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun just to sit back and reminisce and just talk music, talk faith. It's wonderful. I had a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Good. Awesome. Bryan, closing shot.
Just if you're a musician or thinking about being a musician, pray to God that He can use you, and it's a really good way to reach out with the gospel and the stuff we talked about, helping people. I mean, like you help one person, it might not make a world of a difference, but it does make a huge difference in that person's life. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, thanks for coming on. That was pretty cool and a good conversation.
Yeah, good conversation.
Absolutely. If you're watching and you've got prayer requests or have needs or questions, whatever platform you're on, we're checking comment sections and we're accessible. So don't hesitate to reach out. Sean, thanks so much for being with us tonight. This was really cool.
Thank you.
And we're going to say goodnight to everybody and see you next week.
Sean, stay on backstage.
Yes, for sure.
Good night, everybody.